Well, hello. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us here on NAPSE for our first live presentation interview. Um, for those of you who don't know what NAPSE is, we are the National Allies for Parents in Special Education. And this is our first of many live Facebook presentations. We are a very new national organization that is parent driven and really wants to make sure that there are resources and information available for those that are most overlooked and in our underserved communities. Excuse me. Today, we are pleased to announce that we have Dr. Nicole Anthony here with us. She will be a presenter at our conference, which is scheduled for October 5th, 6th, and 7th of October in Charlotte, North Carolina. So, hi, Dr. Anthony. How are you today?
Hello, Miss Poe. How are you?
Great. Nicole Anthony holds a PhD in education with an emphasis on special education from Old Dominion University. Her dissertation topic was using two formats of social stories to increase the social communication skills of three adolescents with ASD. Dr. Nicole is currently an assistant professor and co-chair of the middle grade post-secondary and specialized subject at Fayetteville State University in North Carolina. She has had articles published, which include using the dyad specific social studies to increase communicative and interactional skills of preschoolers with hearing loss in self-contained and inclusive setting. Wow, what a mouthful, right?
Yes,
Um,
absolutely.
she was also her article Another article that she had published was the effects of parallel talk on language and interactional skills of preschoolers with cochlear implants and hearing aids. Dr. Nicole Anthony is also a founding member of the National African American Autism Community Network and a member of the National Black Child Development Institute. Again, we are excited to have Dr. Nicole as one of our presenters for our first annual conference in October 5th, 6th, and 7th in Charlotte, North Carolina. Dr. Nicole, is there any pieces about you that I missed that you want to share with the audience before we jump into this?
Absolutely. First, Cheryl, please call me Nicole. We're on a first name basis. But I also want to share with you that I'm the founder of Elijah's Place. Elijah's Place is near and dear to my heart. It's named after my son Elijah, who is diagnosed with autism. And what we do is we support families who are struggling to get their children's or one child needs met through the educational system. We also provide social communication training, and along with direct advocacy, we also consult with parents.
Yes, how could I forget Elijah's Place? We actually did some fun grassroots projects together over last year. In fact, I think I was sore for a week when we were double dutching at the church
Ah, it was so much
when we
fun.
were doing
Oh,
our
that was so much
community
fun.
outreach. Yes, Dr. Nicole and I went into the city of Norfolk, which has a which is a very urban city, and did informational pieces in barbershops, hair salons, and in churches to the African American community about special education services to ensure that our community was informed, and that was a lot of fun. So, Dr. Anthony, I'm just going to jump in because I'm so excited to have you here, and I know there's a lot of stuff that you want to cover. So let's start off with, um, can you tell us why you are so passionate about serving and helping children that have disabilities?
Well, I believe I'm so passionate because of my own personal experiences uh, with individuals with disabilities. As I said, my son Elijah, who is 21, he's diagnosed with autism. My son Gabriel, who is 12, he's also diagnosed with autism. And my son Mark is identified as a child with ADHD. So there's a lot of fun going on in our household.
Yes, yes, there is. And as a side note, as you can see, she's in her car. Dr. Anthony is transitioning and was willing to take time out in her busy schedule, even though she's in the process of moving from Virginia to North Carolina to do this interview. So I thank you for that. And moving with kids with disabilities, I'm sure that's an experience.
Yes, it has
Yes,
been and it continues to be an experience.
yes. One of the things I'd like for you to talk about are some of the common roadblocks that you see parents experiencing as it relates to trying to get effective services for their children that have disabilities.
Some of the roadblocks that I see constantly is the fact that parents are just unaware of their rights and the services that are available to them. I also see that parents are very trusting, as well they should be, as far as the professionals that service their children. Um, Sometimes you do have to do your own research. And because parents don't know exactly what they don't know, they're not attuned enough to or in tuned enough to do their own research. So I'm
Very,
finding that.
yes. And that's one of the gaps that we hope to close up here with this new national organization. Um, this is a really important question, I think. Why do you think it is important that our community, and when I say our community, I mean the special education community, why do you think it is so important that this community understands the needs of overlooked and underserved populations, specifically Black and Brown children with disabilities, along with those that are poor and live in the rural areas?
Because these are the children who are languishing in our juvenile detention centers and our county lockups. These are the individuals who are in prisons. I was just reading one statistic that said that 85% of the children in juvenile detention have at least one disability. And a disproportionate amount of these children are children of color. So just with that point right there, we're doing a disservice on our end as far as advocates and educators. We're failing these children, our most vulnerable children, because look where they're ending up. Instead of receiving the services that they need to be successful, they're ending up in juvenile detention centers, prison, or, dead, So I feel like it's something that we all need to hold on to and to address.
And do you see gaps within the special education community, the advocacy world, as it relates to addressing this issue?
I think when we say gaps, I think that we're truly not reaching out to that underserved population. And I find that it's great that NAPSE was developed to address the needs of the underserved communities. However, um, for the most part, the people who are receiving the advocacy services are people who have the resources. And if you lack those resources, then you don't get the needed services.
Exactly.
So you're at a disadvantage.
And you shared some compelling statistics with us that 85% of the children that are in lockup are not only of color, but they're also suffering from some form, not suffering, but are also experiencing some form of disability. What do you say to those, because they're out there, that say maybe those kids that are locked up that are Black, it is because their behaviors are worse and deserve to be locked up? How do we change that kind of mindset?
Well, I would ask them first to show me the data because data don't lie. Show me the data that states or indicates that African American children, children of color, act any worse than their white counterparts.
Yes.
I'm looking for articles. I'm looking for the data to support that. However, what I do find is that implicit bias impacts the number of children who are being referred to special education services, and the people who are doing this referring, these are overly, these are an overwhelming majority of white women, because more than 70% of your teacher population are white women. So that they're doing the referrals. So
Yes.
if you have any data that suggests that Black children behave any worse than their white counterparts, I would love to see it, because there isn't any data that I know of that exists.
So one of the missions or one of the purposes of NAPSE is to ensure that the population we're talking about, the overlooked and that the underserved, have access to educators such as yourself and other experts that are in the field. Share with us how our mission, how our goal, what attracts you to what it is we're trying to do.
I think the fact that it is a part of your mission statement to reach the underserved community. I mean, I know other organizations that say they're going to do it. However, it's more of a almost like a side note to them. However, you put it right there and out front that this is one of our missions, that we plan on reaching back, reaching out, and making sure the needs of the underserved community are met in multiple ways. And I know you, Cheryl, as a person, the fact that you would go out with me and go out in the community to speak to parents in barbershops, beauty salons, cultural hubs, in order to meet them where they are. That speaks a lot about you as the president of NAPSE.
I
So that's
appreciate
my
you saying that.
expectation
Thank you.
um,
Thank you.
from the organization.
Right. And we are new, and we're really excited about the conference coming up. We have your session will be geared specifically to advocates, those that are out there doing the groundwork. Do you want to share with us a little bit about what you're going to be talking about during in October?
Sure. So um, my talk is going to be about when race and disability intersect, and how we get to the school to prison pipeline, or the preschool to prison pipeline. And I'm examining it from a different lens, as far as I'm looking at it from an educator lens. Of course, I'm going to do the research and we're going to look at the data, but how does a child travel this road from preschool to juvenile detention or possibly prison?
Yes. Wow. Yeah, so that'll be very interesting. You'll be showing us the road. Will you be able to provide us with some insights on what we as advocates can do to slow that roll or stop that funnel into the prison system?
I'm hoping that we could brainstorm together.
Yes,
I'm
yes,
hoping that we can talk and come up with different ideas about what we can do in our own individual communities, because some things are going to be universal. However, uh, some remedies are going to have to be specific to that uh, community in which you serve.
exactly,
So that
exactly.
is going to be a part of the talk, a brainstorming session.
So, in your work as providing advocacy services, I know that you recently were an expert witness in a due process case. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And what was that like? What was that like? If you don't mind sharing a little bit about, the case and your experiences with that, and how the family and the child, how things like that impact them and impede them. And
Well, with
and
this,
and I'm sorry, we will say that this was a brown child,
yeah.
that the case that we're referencing. So,
Um, so the young man that I was working with and that I was able to take part in a due process case, the family, they were very distraught by the fact that their child's needs weren't being met, a child with autism. And I consider him more of a classic case, because with autism, it's not a disorder where you can actually see it. It's not like Down syndrome, although some children with Down syndrome have autism, or Angelman syndrome. They, their facial characteristics look pretty much just like everyone else. However, classic in a sense for this child, in that his mannerisms were clear, as far as the way he talked, his prosody, this his posture. You know, if you had any experience with a child who is diagnosed with autism, you knew that he was on the spectrum. So I know that was, difficult for the family because he was an older child, but then transitioning into high school. And I had an opportunity to visit that high school, and I want to say that the high school was very typical. However, I didn't feel like that was the right setting for the child. And the school system believed that possibly it was, and that they could meet his needs, at that particular school. And yeah, I had an opportunity, to speak about him and, some of his characteristics, and pretty much let them know that that wasn't the right, setting for him.
And as a minority child and family, I know some of my experiences are that they tend to hesitate a little bit more going against the system out of fear for all kinds of reasons. Um, in your work, have you also experienced that when dealing with the minority population, that they tend to be fearful to speak against the establishment or the institution? And what are some of your experiences with that? And what are some of the things that you say to parents that may feel that way? And what is some of your suggestions to advocates that may come across or maybe working with a family that's not unique to them and they experience that? What would your suggestion be?
Well, I think there are multiple questions in there, so I'm gonna go one at a time.
Sorry about that. I
So,
was on a roll.
the first question is, I think parents fear retaliation from the
Yes.
school district.
Yes.
I think parents are just genuinely trusting. They trust that, the administrators, the school professionals, they trust that they're experts and they know what they're talking about. And like I said again, you don't know what you don't know.
Right. Oops, yes, you
So
have a visitor.
yeah, I
Looks
have
like
a
you had a
visitor. I'm
visitor.
like, what is happening? I'm like, what is happening? So I think we need to be, when we're in a situation when we know that the family, if they're fearful of retaliation, um, we have to understand that once we leave them, they're on their own. And they are responsible for that child forever plus 1 day. That's what I tell all of my families. You're responsible for this child forever plus 1 day. So whatever I say to you it's a suggestion. I'm making a recommendation. However, you have to live with your choices that you make. I want to make sure that I leave you more informed than when you started. However, at the end of the day, you have to make certain decisions. So I would suggest that, I'm sorry, I'm looking at the people going in my house. I would suggest that make sure that you leave your parents more empowered than when you first started with them, so that they can feel comfortable enough to make certain decisions for their child or children.
That is
Um,
such an important point. I wholeheartedly agree that that is one of the things that I constantly share with my families too, that, I can get you through this phase. However, you have to take away some of these skills of to protect yourself, of documenting. And I get it. Maybe you don't have access to a computer and you're going to the library to have to send an email because you can't afford a computer. Or maybe you're not comfortable with how you write or communicate. You have to understand that that is okay. The school district has to meet you where you are, and you have a right to communicate your concerns and document your concerns in a way that protects you. And in the process of working with them, finding other ways in which where they can feel comfortable in getting that point across. And the phone and a phone call does wonder. I was just going to
yeah,
say that a phone call to document your concern does wonder only in the state of Virginia, because in the state of Virginia, we're a one-party consent state, so you
I'm
can.
on. I'm
Right.
conducting an interview right
Oh,
now.
sorry about that. Where do you want that couch around
Just
that
put it on the
Yes.
side, please. Thank you.
Yes.
Sorry, life is happening. Life is happening. I'm sorry.
Melinda, we have some people out there that are watching us, and we are asking that if they have any questions for us, that they go ahead and post it, and it'll be forwarded to us, and we will address those particular questions. Um, you, no. No, there's something about applying for PTI grants. I don't think that's relevant for us. So, Nicole, I want to kind of go back to some of the statistics and some of the information that you know as it relates to the outcomes for African Americans or minority children. Can you share with the audience your impression of what I call the uproar about the GOP report that identifies African Americans as being over identified in areas of ED or ID slash what used to be called MR or discipline. Discipline is a huge one that Black children with disabilities or without disabilities are disciplined harsher, suspended more than their white counterparts. As an advocate, or as a parent, what do you want the audience to know about how to protect themselves from some of the findings that were in that report?
I think,
And does those findings, do they surprise you?
no, I'm going to say it's nothing new under the sun. Pretty much. I mean, that doesn't surprise me. We've been talking about this. It doesn't seem to already, like I said, it's not that my topic is new about race intersecting. However, I'm examining it from a different lens as far as the educator's point of view. What can I say to advocates who are supporting families? You just really have to be more aware of what's happening with your child, the type of services that they're receiving, making sure that you're proactive versus reactive to a lot of situations, and that's where a lot of our parents are caught. They're reacting all the time versus being proactive and looking at data. How can we change IEP goals and objectives for our children to make sure they're making the necessary progress to be successful? We have a lot of children, like as you said, Cheryl, that are in juvenile detention or are receiving discipline referrals that initially start at the minor level. They start minor, like insubordination, and then they
Yes.
escalate. And then they escalate. So parents intervening at that insubordination, that minor infractional level would help in the long run with mitigating some of the challenges that they're having once they go to that discipline, because it takes a little while, unless your behavior, like you're fighting or there's some other serious concerns. But many of the issues that children are having start really, really small and they snowball. So that's why I'm telling parents to be more proactive versus reactive with their children, and help advocates help their parents do that as well.
And one of things that I think I saw someone post, Klein was her name, was the idea that the jargon, the jargon in special ed, and excuse us and forgive us if we have been guilty of that ourselves today during this interview. But I know with my families, when I'm working with the underserved, there are so many times, like you said about being proactive, is um, helping our clients understand the language of special education or the language of the IEP meeting, and and making room for them, making space for them to ask the question without shame, right? What does OT mean? What does FBA mean? What does IEP mean? Would you agree that that is absolutely an important piece, and not just for the minority population, but for any population, that making sure that the parent has space to be engaged and get the information that they know to be able to and be proactive, as you talked about.
So, and I think that starts from day one. I think we tend to, as advocates, jump right in with telling the parent what they should do
Right.
versus versus allowing them to tell us what they think should happen
Right. Right.
and how we can get them to that particular goal. And we
Exactly.
take over. See, I think we need to do so more of empowering our parents
Yes.
and making sure that they know that, like you said, Cheryl, that they have the right to ask questions. Now, it doesn't even have to be so much of, I don't, okay, they don't understand a particular some phrase or some jargon or a legalese, but hey,
Yes.
you can say, I don't understand this. Explain
Yes.
it to me. You have that right
Yes.
to say that. You don't have to know everything, but you
Yes.
have the right to ask the questions to figure it out.
Yes. And parent training is a resource for parents. But my experience in some of the communities or some of the populations that I work with, um, if they reach out, I've had Black parents say, yeah, I've tried to go to our special education advisory committee, but I wasn't comfortable because guess what? No one there looks like me, so they can't understand me. Or they go to the parent resource center. Again, no one there looks like me, and
Right.
feeling quite isolated. So I think that when that situation happens, what do you recommend to parents, or how do you help them either A, get over the sense of being the only one and being self-conscious already about your child having a disability? Because in the Black community, acknowledging your child has a disability at times is hard. It is hard to that get over that stereotype, right?
Right.
So when working with a Black family or a minority family, what are some of the things that you do to help them get over being uh, their fears or their insecurities?
Well, I think that there's power in numbers. So
Okay.
if you feel like you're the only one headed to that CF or that Parent Training Institute, bring a friend along. So you're not the only one.
Amen. So you're not
Um,
the only one.
so
Excellent.
that you're not the only one, and you'll find that um, certain places and spaces, if you just be open enough to talk about what's happening with you, there are other parents in that same boat. And I find, as you said, Cheryl, that especially in our community, is we deal with a lot of isolation because of the fact that we have a child with a disability, and we have certain people who are offering their suggestions and they really don't understand. But then you have a lot of people who do understand, and they're feeling isolated as well. So to have that courage to start that conversation about
Mhm.
your child and their particular needs, you'll find that other people right in that room, they agree with you, and they're just looking for someone to start that conversation. And you could take that person with you, and that person takes another person, and so forth and so on. And that's how we build a community of learners and empower people.
Yes, I think that's an excellent idea for any advocate that is working with a population that feels isolated like that, to build on each other within the family, within their community, within their neighbors. Um,
Because that's our
we
strength. That's our strength. Our community is our strength as
It is
African
our
Americans.
strength.
When we didn't have, and I was at the African American Museum, and there was a saying up that we make a way out of no way, and we
Mm.
did that all the time during segregation, Jim Crow laws. We did that by leaning on community members, by leaning on family members, and we have to get back to that because you are right. There aren't a lot of us at the CX. There aren't a lot of us in the parent training institutes. There, at times, I could be the only Black person in the room, but that's
Yes,
okay too.
yes, that is
But
okay
that's
too.
okay too because
That
I'm
is
getting the
okay too.
information that'll help my community, and I'm fine with that.
Right. Um, I want to go back on a very and talk with you about a touchy subject. There is a parent that posts that she had a child that was bullied. Here it says, my sped son, who is Black, was disciplined for being a victim of racial bullying. Can you talk to us a little bit about what your experiences are in situations like that?
Hold on one second. I'm sorry. I'm in the, no, please. I have to go. I'm in the interview. Thank you. I appreciate you. Sorry.
Well, it is an interactive interview. That's all I'm
Yes.
going to say. The community
Yes.
members
Go
want to get
ahead. No.
involved.
Okay. Yes. Sorry. This is my life. My life.
Gosh.
So, please tell me again.
Let me reread the post. There
Sure.
is someone who is watching our interview right now, and she
Yeah.
posted that my sped ed son, who is black, was disciplined for being the victim of racial bullying. This is a parent out of Texas, and I would like for you to talk about your uh, your experiences or your thoughts about how educators handle situations like that.
Well, I think, well, Cheryl, we talk all the time, and my son Gabriel, who was diagnosed with autism, I mentioned him earlier. He was dealing with bullying, and my son Mark, um, he was also dealing with some racially charged bullying. And what I had to do, document everything, document every single interaction and response. I created that email trail between myself and the principal. And when I felt like the principal was not responsive enough to me, I sent that email trail to the superintendent because our children have the right to be safe. No one has the right to put their hands on them. And I wanted the superintendent to know what was happening in that school. Um, the next day, I was very shocked. The next day, the superintendent got in contact with the person over that particular school, and we had a sit down meeting. Now, did it stop? No. However, it did slow down some. It didn't stop completely because you have to find children are going to be children. As an educator, children are going to be children. And depending on what's happening in a household, what they're being exposed to, they're going to act it out in school. But as you as a parent, you have to protect your child. And if you need to go to the police department to report the harassment, to report the bullying, then do so. Then do so.
So we are at our 6:30 mark. We are going to discuss and see if there's any additional questions for about the next 15 minutes. But as you know, in the state, I'm going to open it up to this one question that I understand is going to be controversial, but I'm okay with that, and I know you are too. So here in the state of Virginia, we have a situation where African American that we are the state of Virginia is number one in sending kids with disabilities and black children into the court system. I mean, out of all the nations, the study was done by the Office of Civil Rights. It's not me making it up. But one of the things that I found very interesting when that piece came out here, a lot of feedback, a lot of things from people that I was actually surprised at were saying things, well, maybe that is because, again, black kids act better. Or worse yet, I've heard people try and excuse it away by saying that um, black children or people having concerns about black children with disabilities going into the school to prison pipeline, that we're somehow playing a race card. And as an educator and a researcher, what would be your response to anyone out there that's watching us that doesn't believe the data, and whose overall position is that black kids are worse than white kids? And then lastly, that making a plea to address this and stop this is somehow playing a race card. What is your feedback as an educator and researcher?
Okay. So someone asked me about playing. Someone asked me about playing the race card before. I say you can't play something that has been in play for centuries. It's interwoven into our society in the United States. So you can't play something that's already been in play for hundreds of years. This country is built on an imbalance of power between black and white. We have systematic racism. It plays out in our schools. It plays out in our justice system. So all I'm doing is shedding some light, bringing it to light what we're seeing in our school system and how it's affecting our children. Um, as far as black children behaving any worse than their white counterparts, if there's data to support it, as I said before, data don't lie. Please bring it out. I would love for someone to provide us with the data so that we can disaggregate it and look at
Uh-huh.
it for what it is.
Got it.
You're smiling, Cheryl. So is there a
Yes,
question?
I am smiling because with that question that I just asked you, I was
Oh,
informed that we lost 9 viewers.
wow.
Yes, that 9 people dropped
Okay.
from us asking that question. It says just dropped to 9 views with that question, and I think that that is telling because
It's a touchy subject. Race
it
is
is
a
a
touchy
touchy,
subject.
it's a very touchy subject. However, if we are going to make a change for all children, we have to acknowledge that there are pockets and population within our community, the special education community, that have been ignored. And we
Right.
have to give voice to that. We have to dismiss some of the myths that are associated with that. And we have to be willing to work together and confront some of the biases that exist in order for everyone to get better. You know, one of the biggest pieces that I think people don't understand is that the special IDEA, the Individuals with Disabilities Act, the issues of special education come straight from Brown versus the Department of Education, equal but not separate. And it's sad that even now, 2018, that people find that that they find this to be a difficult topic to talk about. And I just
Thank
want
you,
to
Tasha.
thank the viewers that are out here that are comfortable in supporting us as we do something new and different. With this particular topic and making sure that the resources are out there, not only for Black advocates, but for white advocates that work with Black families or minority families. And I think one of the other important pieces is that some of the statistics that Nicole that you share as it relates to poor outcomes for children of color, that is very, very true and equal to that of those in the rural areas that are, you know, your poor rural families. Their outcomes are equally as bad and dismal and disheartening as it is for the your minority groups. So thank you for being here with us.
Very
Um,
welcome.
is there anything again, what was going to be the name of your topic at the conference on October 5th, 6th, and 7th?
When race and disability intersect, the road to the school to prison pipeline.
Excellent. And it will be for the advocates that attend the conference. And the purpose of this will to give you all tools and resources when you come across this phenomenon, because this is not limited to the state of Virginia. This is happening nationally, and in order to be an effective advocate and to be more inclusive with the services that you provide, you need the tools to engage families. So with that, so I thank all the viewers out there. Nicole, I know you were
Thank
in
you.
transition with moving to North Carolina. We're going to miss you dearly,
Yeah.
but I know the children out there need you also as you continue on with your with teaching and doing some work and some local grassroots grassroots work. Um, we are announcing that this is just our first presentation. We will also have other um, presenters that will be at the I can't talk, sorry, NAPSE conference. We got confirmation on an attorney out of Alabama who just opened a law firm this year where he's going to be working with underserved populations, and it'll be interesting to hear what that experience was like. I will be talking a little bit more about who we are, how NAPSE came together, um, some of our goals, more so going into a little bit more detail than what was shared today, next month, and looking for other presenters that will probably be sharing some of their information that will be presented at the conference. So I just want to thank everyone for being here today. Um, Again, this was our first presentation, so bear with us with the glitches. Nicole had a whole community that wanted to be interviewed with us. Uh, and I just want to say goodbye and thank you. So, goodbye.